welcome to the open school board meeting of District 25 Arlington Heights. It is 7:04 and we are going to be going to our open public meeting. Lana, if you could please call the roll call. We have a couple of board members not feeling well today, so we're going to be missing them. But Lana, go ahead, please. If you can call the roll.
Member Conley?
Here.
Member Cerniglia?
Here.
Member Jogi?
Yes.
Member
here.
Scapalato?
Here.
Now, I don't call the others because they're not here, right?
Correct,
Okay.
they're absent. We may have Member Faso on the phone today. She'd like to listen in, or she's going to be watching.
She's going to watch.
She's going to be watching us. So thank you so much, Lana. We will now stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. It's really nice to see so many faces here today. Thank you for coming, everybody. We're now going to go into an exciting part of our board meeting every week, every time we meet, and it's recognitions. And we're super excited that our district has been named the Best Communities in Music Education Award recognition of music, band, and music for youth teachers. And we truly thank our dedicated, creative, passionate, enthusiastic, and caring music, chorus, band, and music for youth teachers. The district has been awarded Best Communities for Music Education, national recognition by the National Association of Music Merchants Foundation. And the foundation recognizes and celebrates school districts for their support and commitment to music education. So we're so proud of this achievement.
Thank you, and I think Dr. Becky Fitzpatrick is going to do the recognition for us.
So today, as our board president just mentioned, we are honored to recognize our district and our Music for Youth teachers for their role in our community being awarded a Best Communities in Music Education by the NAM Foundation. This national award recognizes outstanding efforts by teachers, administrators, parents, students, and community leaders who have made music education part of a well-rounded education. And designations are made to districts and schools that demonstrate an exceptionally high commitment and access to music education. This year's awards in particular, this is the 23rd year of these awards, was designed to celebrate schools and districts adapting, innovating, and persevering in the face of change. And recent music performances across District 25 have really been a celebration for our community and clearly demonstrate this innovation. So at this time, when I call your name, if you would please come forward so that we could recognize you. Our music teachers are Jerry Berger, Dana Berry, Katie Konemikes, Riley Cook, Len Deptula, Kate Hojek, Candace Horton, Oksana Lukachevsky, Adam Mead, Kathy Prevet, Caitlin Pucci, Kate Randolph, Nina Rousey, Caroline Schneider. Sorry, I was rattling them off quickly, Dr. Bine. Olivia Weissman, Casey Whitaker, Camille Zeman, Karen Nurani, Tamara Glassberg, James Sanders, Gretchen Gruby, Vanya Phillips, Philip Lee, and Chunyun Claudiawan. So I invite you all to join me in giving our exceptional music educators a standing ovation. Bravo! Thank you so much all for being here tonight. We really appreciate your work. And I don't know if you noticed, some even came in instruments in hand.
Yeah, Brian, maybe we need to invite them to play at the opening of some of our board meetings. That'd be really great. Thank you so much. Truly spectacular. Now we're going to move on to our community input portion.
1 second.
Yeah,
Of course, our music teachers are welcome to stay for the meeting, but you're also welcome to go home for probably your first night throughout the month. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, please go enjoy. Thank you. Move on to community input. Yeah, okay.
While they are leaving, I'll let the board know that we also shared the great news of this award with the mayor of Arlington Heights and trustees. We just mailed a letter to them late last week, so they should be becoming aware of that this week. And we thanked them on behalf of the school district and the support that they provide for us in making sure that we can continue things like music for our kids.
That's incredible. That's awesome. Okay, we will now move on to community input portion of our meeting. And I would like to notify our guests today that you're all welcome and we're glad to see you. And the opportunity to speak to the board is provided for members of the public who have a comment to make about the business of the board. The board appreciates hearing from stakeholders and values your thoughts and questions. As the board strives to make the best decisions for the district, public input is always helpful. In order for the board to reserve sufficient time to conduct its business and to operate its meetings in the spirit of civility and decorum, speakers are expected to follow the following guidelines. Number 1, please address the board only at the time provided on the agenda and only after being recognized by the board president. Number 2, identify yourself and please be brief. Your comments must be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. The board may shorten this allowed time in order to conserve time to allow the maximum number of people the opportunity to speak. And number 3, please be respectful and courteous, and the board requests that you not make any statements that are personally disrespectful or condescending to members of the board or staff. The board typically does not respond to comments or attempt to answer questions during the public comment period, but we do listen intently and appreciate the input from our community. Dr. Bine, do we have any we have slips right here, thank you. Our first public comment is from, if I can read this correctly, Joan Candle, I believe. Is that correct? Please correct me if I didn't say it right. Joanne, thank you. Well,
Yes, please.
thanks, Joanne.
Thank you. So I'm Joanne Carroll, and born and raised in Arlington Heights, and raised my children elsewhere, but I'm back in Arlington now and love it. Always have loved it. Came from one of 7 kids, very hardworking parents who fought hard and long in a lot of things going on in Arlington Heights back when we were all raised. So I wanted to start out by thanking the board, Stacy, Lori, the other gentleman, Joe, is this? Ryan, I'm sorry. Great presentations, and I wanted to thank them for that. And some of the board members, Greg, Dr. Joji, and Rich, who's not here, for coming and hearing our points, hearing the concerns. It would be nice to see if, other board members to come to the other meetings so that you guys can hear it firsthand. A lot of pros and cons. So thank you for your attendance in those meetings. I did want to address a couple points on the $8,000 study that we paid for and was, I believe, presented to you folks on March 1st, or at the March 8th meeting. The two, Dr. Casada and Patrick Howell, who have PhDs, did raise some really good points that, based on the enrollment, demographics, everything they put into this study, that it was in their feeling that Table 7 in this study shows the kindergarten enrollment should increase slightly above status quo levels. And if student in migration and transfer from private and parochial schools occur as anticipated, which is likely their honest opinion, that would be Plan B, not Plan C. They go on to make a concluding remark with a caveat of the unsettling times we're in, COVID-19, everything else. To implement a free kindergarten program at this time is highly risky. I hope all of you board members who voted on this took that into consideration. And I mean, if you were given a medical procedure that was considered highly risky, would you guys just go for it? You know, I wish that you had put more thought into it, and I hope that, you know, if this doesn't pass, that things will be revised for November to a more responsible level of tax increase. It's not fair, not right. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sheila Cruz, and I'm here tonight to express my disappointment in the administration and board for asking businesses and residents to vote on a huge tax increase for an all-day kindergarten program that has been proven to be not necessary. You tout the referendum as providing child care to low-income families. The 2022 census reports the average Arlington Heights household of 3 has a combined income of over $100,000, not low income. The 2022 federal poverty guidelines for a low-income family of 3 says you would be having a household income of $23,000. Not many people living in Arlington Heights on a $23,000 budget unless they live with a senior citizen whose mortgage is paid. 22% of Arlington Heights residents are seniors, and then they shouldn't be paying for child care in the first place. Dr. Bynes said kindergarten is not required by the Illinois state law, so why are you pushing this agenda? You paid for an enrollment study and an opinion study in February, a public opinion study in February. Dr. Casarda, PhD in school demography, says the half-day kindergarten program is working just fine as is, and given the slow growth in Arlington Heights for kindergarten, will be just fine till 2032 due to expected decline in student population. And as for a full-day kindergarten program, Dr. Casarda projects only a modest increase in the next 5 years. And he cautions venturing into an all-day kindergarten program scheme is highly risky, given the inflation since the highest inflation since the 1940s and emerging from COVID pandemic. The public opinion study resulted in 48% surveyed said parents should pay for an all-day kindergarten program, while 42% said the district should provide it and 9% didn't respond. These same responders said your buildings were just fine, but Ryan Schultz, superintendent of facilities, claims he needs $32.9 million in infrastructure right now, despite having a $57 million reserve. Stacy Malik, finance officer for the district, reassured us taxpayers that we'll pay every year for 20 years, should the referendum pass. And as our property values increase, so will this tax. On a $400,000 home with no reassessment in 20 years, that's a $6,000 bill for a very expensive kindergarten. On the heels of the surveys that do not support the referendum, you are pushing this ballot on a June primary that has never been done before, banking on a low turnout and a majority win. Most residents would expect to see this vote during the primaries in November. Since the full-day kindergarten in a few schools, practice that and charge the parents, like some of the other towns around us, charge the parents. After all, kindergarten is optional in our state. But do chip away at the infrastructure with the funds you have now. You claim these are life safety issues. Please address those. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz. Our next speaker is Roger Berg.
My name is Roger Berg, and following on what was said, I'd like the board to propose a rule that no referendums can be put on ballots other than general election in November, and would require a minimum of 10% of the voters in the district to favorably pass it. Simple, plus responding to the voters and asking the voters for affirmative proof. 10% is an insignificant portion to ask for.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Wojcik.
Good evening. My name is Eva Wójcik. Last Friday, Thomas Middle School and likely other middle schools in our district were celebrating the Day of Silence. I learned from another parent. I emailed my principal for more info, and she explained the Day of Silence is a national student-led demonstration where LGBTQ students and allies take a vow of silence to protest the harmful effects of harassment and discrimination of LGBTQ people in schools. So the members of the TMS Pride Club created a presentation on it, which was shown in the morning announcements and was posted on the school website. Those who wanted to participate were able to get a pass or make their own and show it to everyone who asks them why they are silent. The principal told me, "We are proud of our students that are engaging in peaceful and appropriate acts to embrace equity." So I asked, if this carries such significance, why wasn't it mentioned in the TMS community newsletter? The principal replied, "I did not view this with great significance because students have participated in this for many years. I have 2 older kids who attended Thomas, and I can tell the emphasis on gender and sexuality has never been as strong as it is now. It is truly an obsession, and I wonder, will the school administration be equally willing to support student activism to protect girls' sports for biological females? Because that's what's coming next to D25 after the gender-neutral bathrooms, right?" Next question, which other club is promoting its ideology to the entire school, and what other demonstration is taking place during instructional time? While the principal said many of our clubs share information about their work in the daily announcements, she was not aware of any other demonstration events scheduled. The principal didn't think that a student who is silent is not actively participating in classwork, saying there are a variety of ways that students actively participate and communicate in class aside from speaking verbally. So the school doesn't see any problem with such demonstrations and doesn't recognize they make some kids very uncomfortable. My daughter missed school because of this. She took her first mental health day, and I was asked if she needed to talk to a social worker, which would make this even worse for her. I received nothing more than programmed responses, which only confirmed the district's agenda that's being pushed so hard. I have a reason to be frustrated about things being done without parents' knowledge when I come across information about the organization that is promoting this event, the same organization that is targeting kids, getting them to come to after-school clubs where they would systematically and secretly change their gender without parents' consent. D25 is proud of any DEI initiative, so I hope there's going to be a talk about this peaceful demonstration tonight when we are showing what our kids are doing at their schools, learning politics and activism instead of getting solid education. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move forward to our consent agenda portion of our meeting, and can I have a motion?
Madam President,
Yes, Greg.
I move that the Board of Education approve those items on the consent agenda as follows. A, personnel report and addendum to personnel report. B, invoices. C, organizational, regular, and closed session meeting minutes of April 21st, 2021.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chad. So, this product by,
So for the consent agenda, you don't typically need a discussion, so you can go ahead and Alana could call the roll.
okay, great, thank you, Len.
Member Cherniglia?
Yes.
Member Jogi?
Yes,
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Member Conley?
Yes.
thank you, Lana. We're going to be moving into communications to and from board members, and this is an informational item. We have the first one will be NSSEO, and we have a report sent from board member Gina Faso. Dr. Vine?
Sure, I can read that.
Thank you.
Gina shares that the Kirk Campus Student Market will be on May 14th from 9 a.m. to 12. This is their first student micro-business student market. The focus is on student micro-businesses and vocational experiences. The students are busy working on their projects for the market and are learning and using important vocational skills. On sale will be plants, dog treats, candles, snacks, and more. The students will be working the event to sell their products and engage with our community members in order to provide them with a meaningful work experience that extends beyond their classroom. This will be held at Kirk School in the back parking lot and is a cash-only event. Again, that's on May 14th. Some upcoming NSSEO graduations. Gina shares that these events are touching, emotional, and demonstrate the hard work and effort that guide and support student success. The Kirk campus graduation will be on May 24th. The Minor School Junior High graduation will be on May 25th. And the Timber Ridge Junior High graduation will be on May 26th. And finally, there is a Timber Ridge golf outing on Saturday, June 4th. This is always a great and celebratory event, and as a non-golfer, offers a good time without the need to participate. If you or your friends love the game, please feel free to share the information and the raffles, and most importantly, the Student Scholarship event. There's some awesome highlights, and it provides a great opportunity for college advancement for Timber Ridge graduates.
Okay, thank you, Gina, for sending in that report, even when you're not feeling well, so we appreciate it. Next, we have a report on IASB, and that's the Illinois Association of School Boards. And as a board, we are getting ready for the fall conference and attending the fall conference and deciding on what sessions we're going to be going to. So our board recording secretary, Lana, has already kind of starting to plan for this. It takes a lot of plan behind the scenes to get to this conference. And we truly believe as a board that learns together, leads together, and we spend a lot of time as a board throughout the year learning and developing as a board, and in November we will commit a whole weekend to learning together. So thank you, Lana, for getting us going and organizing the different sessions we'll be attending to learn. Next we have Ed Red, and Stacy, would you like to report on that?
Just that, because I know Member Olenichek wanted to make sure we mentioned that with the error that was made at the state level in regards to the EBF funding formula for schools, that Chicago Public Schools got $87 million excess due to an error in the calculation. As a Tier 3 district, we are getting a portion of that. Unfortunately, it's only $18,000, but we are getting $18,000.
Thank you for that, Stacy. And the Ed Red had a meeting last week, a fall division meeting. I think they call it the State Legislator Dinner. And Dr. Bine, myself, and Board Member Philippek were there, and we always share notes with the rest of our board members. And Dr. Ayala was there. She's the state superintendent, and spoke really kind of on behalf of what's been happening at the state level. And there was a panel discussion with board members from the North Cook area and superintendents and administrators, really talking about social emotional learning and the impact and the work they've been doing at their district. So really kind of sharing that information with us as a board. So that was really helpful to be at. They did a really nice job. And next we have, let's see, we're going to be moving on to other board communication. And for that, the first speaker we have.
Actually, this is just if anybody has anything else.
Oh, yes, our board communication. So if there's any board communication from our board members, this is the time we'd love to hear.
Nope.
Okay. Well, actually, there was a couple of things that happened during the week, right? Or during the last couple of weeks. I want to thank the Arlington Heights Council PTA, hosted a fabulous scholarship breakfast, and they fundraised to give out inspiring students a scholarship that they then move on, our seniors go on to, and that event was held here last week. It was really nicely done. Nicole was running around trying to put that together with her whole team, and we so appreciate it. And the stories that came from the high school students were truly inspiring. The committee had warned us to keep a tissue close by, and I didn't take them up on that warning, and then I really needed that tissue. So it was just such impressive students, and they're so grateful to District 25 for their journey moving forward. And we're going to be following their impact journeys as they move on into the world here. So that was one thing. And then last night, board members and Dr. Vine and administrators, I know Dr. Fitzpatrick was there as well, and our principals were there. We were at the Arlington Heights Art Appreciation event at the art show at the Arlington Heights Memorial Library, and our students did a fabulous job, the art teachers. The event was really fabulous, and we're grateful to Arlington Heights Library for hosting that event. So all these fun things happening. May is a busy time. Our calendars are full of exciting things. So now we can move on to communication to board members, and our first communication comes from Nicole, please.
Have to adjust, sorry. Okay, good evening. So at the end of March, the Arlington Heights Council of PTAs was honored to award scholarships to both elementary and high school students. The elementary level scholarships were awarded to 3 Windsor students, 1 Greenbrier student, 1 Dryden student, and 1 Olive student. We hope they enjoy a program or class through the Park District this summer with their gift certificate. Just last week, as Anisha spoke of, we also awarded 9 high school seniors, each with a $1,000 college scholarship. 5 former Westgate students, 1 former Dryden student, 1 former Windsor student, 1 former Patton student, and 1 former Olive student all received a scholarship. It was a very memorable morning, and we wish them the best of luck in the future. We would also like to recognize 2 D25 students who advanced to the national level of Reflections, the National PTA Art Contest. Cleo P., a 6th grade student who attends South Middle School, was awarded a National PTA Excellence Award for her Reflections short story entitled, I Am a Book. Over 900 students' entries were submitted, and she was chosen for her literature submission. Congratulations to Cleo. And also, in addition to Cleo, Francesca S., a 4th grader from Olive Mary Stitt, also advanced to the national level for her dance choreography entitled The Light. So way to go, Francesca, on that. The PTA would also like to thank all of the volunteers who have worked so hard this week to provide meals, snacks, and surprises for all of the teachers throughout Teacher Appreciation Week. So thank you to our volunteers. And one more note, when you register your child next year for school, make sure you join the PTA. Thank you.
I love that last plug. Our PTA does so much around, and I've been looking at, as a board, we love to look at all the pictures that come through our amazing social media team, and the PTA lounges have been full of so much love and food, and so that's so appreciated. And definitely this week, Staff Appreciation Week, Teacher Appreciation Week, we're so grateful to all our teachers, and those stacks are extremely well deserved. So thank you, PTA, and all the parents in the community, and we truly appreciate all our teachers in the district. The next report we have is for ABC 25 Foundation.
I can read that. So,
thank you.
Like many board members, Gina is a board member. She also represents us at Nsseo. She also represents us at ABC 25 Foundation. Gina shares another successful ABC 25 Get Burbed Challenge complete. Thank you to the 400 plus participants and spectators who participated in the 5K and 1 mile event. Thank you to the ABC 25 committee for their months of hard work preparing for the event. And thank you to Get Burbed and all of our sponsors throughout the village for their support. We have loved our mascots race, and in the same fashion as the masked singer, we all enjoyed learning who was behind the mask. Special thank you call-outs. Angie Thanopoulos, every year gets better with your leadership. Our volunteers, we could not do it without you and your help. Pickle Book Designs for the amazing job capturing our runners and the amazing energy. If you have not seen the pictures, please check out ABC 25 social media for the link. And our wonderful MC, Rob Z, and our DJ, Scottify, or as we know him, Scott Philippek. This year was inspiring to us all, and we appreciate all of the community participation and support. We're so proud to be able to raise money through this event and others to give back to our amazing teachers. To keep that momentum going, and for anyone that would like to be a part of the foundation, please consider a donation during student enrollment.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bine. The ABC 25 Foundation, it was pouring that morning, and still all these people were there, and everybody was having a great time, and the mascots definitely made it a lot of fun. So the board members truly appreciated being at that event and just seeing all the smiles. During COVID, there were some runs that didn't happen, right?
They went virtual.
They went virtual, and so we're actually running. So the board members also appreciated getting some fitness in over the weekend. So thank you to ABC 25. It was a really amazing event for a great cause. The next up, we have Allison Berg with the Teachers Union, ATA.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight I am wearing my district t-shirt because I am not focusing on any one particular school, but a few district activities. This is going to be my briefest chat tonight, if I can. Let's see if I can do it. Okay, so I first want to just give a shout out to ABC 25, the Get Verb Challenge. It was last weekend, and it's an awesome event. Many of our lots of people in our community took part in it, and the ATA is pleased that some of our teachers also took part in that race. It was a fun time had by all, despite the pouring rain. ATA provides scholarships to students of ATA members who are headed off to college next year, and our committee, headed by Becky Dufern, have selected the lucky recipients for this year, so I'm just going to take a moment to announce them. Luke Brown, whose parent is Nicole Brown at Patton, is a senior at Prospect High School, and he's headed to the University of Illinois to study aerospace engineering. He is also a product of District 25 schools, and he's receiving a $1,000 scholarship. Kendall Fano, also a $1,000 scholarship. ATA parent Becky Fano of Thomas Middle School. His father also works in the district. Kendall is a senior at Rolling Meadows High School. Headed to Northwestern University to study learning and organizational change in history. Kendall is also a product of D25 schools. And Addison Salsky is getting a $500 scholarship. Her parent is Julie Salsky from Ivy Hill. Addison is a senior at Mundelein High School, headed to Iowa State University to study music education, which is timely for this evening. So I wanted to, again, shout out thank you to Becky Dufern and the rest of her committee for taking the time to read those applications of all the deserving students and choosing our recipients for this year. I want to give a quick shout out next weekend, Sunday, mark your calendars, May 15th, our Special Olympics athletes will be competing in the district's very first ever Special Olympic Games. If you want to catch any of the action, you should head over to Prospect High School between 9 and 2, and you can catch some of those events going on. It should be awesome. And finally, ATA Business, completely coincidental, brought me to South yesterday, and I happened upon the Thomas versus South track meet, and since I was there, I took some pictures to share with all of you this evening. So enjoy. I have no idea of any of the stats or who won, so you can just see the pictures that I took from my cell phone and enjoy some of our kids from Thomas and South doing what they do best. It was beautiful. I heard some of the kids go, "That's my 4th grade teacher." It was so fun to see some of my former students. Yeah. I tried so hard to get action shots, but they all just kind of look the same. Yeah. Oh. And that was the official business that I went over there with Mr. Kim, one of the coaches. And just a quick shout out, which I didn't have in my notes, but thank you to the PTA for all the lovely treats that the teachers have been getting this week for Teacher Appreciation. We do feel so appreciated, and I know I can speak for all of the teachers here in District 25 that we're very lucky to work in such a great district. So thank you. Have a good evening.
Next up, we have a superintendent's report, starting with the Freedom of Information Act report.
Thank you. And as you can see, there's only been one Freedom of Information Act request since our last meeting, and that was responded to on April 29th.
Thank you, Dr. Bain. And next up, we have board meeting dates for 2022-2023, and this is an action item. Please, could I have a motion?
Madam President.
Yes, Greg.
I move that the Board of Education approve the board meeting dates for 2022-2023 as presented.
Okay, thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Brian. Dr. Veit?
So this, after the board's previous discussion, we reworked the dates. Again, these will be on Tuesdays next year, so that's a change, at least in the past 10 or so years. So they will be on Tuesdays, but that is nice. It does not overlap with District 214. It does not overlap with the village. And so we're excited to get these on the calendar so that people can plan for the full 22-23 school year.
Thank you so much. Like Dr. Biden said, you know, we shifted the meetings so that our parents can attend and there's no conflicts. And so we want to be totally accessible for everybody to come and be here. Input is really important and participation is really important to us. So thank you for that. And Dr. Biden, next we have the ACRA. Oh, we have a on the action item. Yes, thank you very much. Alana, could you please call the roll for the vote?
Member Cerniglia?
Yes.
Member Jogi?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Member Conley?
Yes.
That's 4. Thank you so much. Now we can, it's an information item for the ACRA report on student growth.
Thank you. So we have Dr. Eleni Speron with us here tonight. Dr. Speron, it's typically our presenters would sit over there, if that works for you. Okay. And Eleni is from the ECRA Group, which is a premier research and analytics consulting firm that helps educational leaders really look at data and make some decisions as we continue instruction. And she will share quite a bit of really interesting information with you about student proficiency and about student growth. So we'll let her get set up a little bit. And then Dr. Speron, whenever you're ready, I think you have the thing there that will move the slides if you'd like to.
Hello, good evening. I am Eleni Speron. I'm actually the dedicated consultant for District 25, and I'm happy to be here. So we're just going to go through some slides today that talk about the state of the district in terms of academic proficiency and growth. So we're going to start by talking about proficiency, then we'll go into growth, we'll review some student groups, and then we will talk about academic return on investment around some of the programs that you have in the district. Oops. Okay. Oh, okay. Got it. Yep. Yep. Sorry.
No, I got it.
Oh, to the left. Oh, okay. Nope. Okay. Okay. So in terms of the main topics, we have proficiency and we have growth. So when we're trying to look at the the quality of a school system, traditionally we've focused on proficiency, which is really answering the question of what % of the students are meeting either math or reading standards. Growth has become more popular the last 5 years, both around the state as well as the nation, because it is a more equitable approach to assessing improvement efforts. And growth is really looking at how much students are learning or growing across assessments across time. With the ECRA analytics, you have a very systemic approach to look at growth, where you can actually look at growth all the way at the utmost level, the highest level, which would be a district level, as well as going all the way down to individual students. So it's a really systemic way that you can try to understand what the impact is of different programs and initiatives, curriculum that you have here in your district. Okay. Still going too fast. Okay. All right. So we're going to start by looking at the proficiency for mathematics. And so what you see here on this slide is the proficiency, and it shows all the way down to first grade up to 8th grade. And then at the very bottom, you see a summary row that shows you the proficiency for the entire district. And this is using the spring NWA MAP data. And you can see that it's 46% of the students are proficient in math, and the younger grades start out, and this is a cross-section, so this is different groups of students. It's the grade level trend. So you can see that the younger grades are a bit higher. There's a little bit of a dip there in 4th grade, kind of goes back up in 5th grade, and then dips a little bit again in 6th and 7th grade, and then goes back up a little bit in 8th grade. And then we have reading. So for reading, you could see that the percent of students, thank you. That's okay. The percent of students that are meeting the reading standards, they're a little more similar when you're looking across grades. So you'll see, for example, you don't see that dip there in 4th grade. There's a little bit of a decrease there in grade 6 and grade 6 and grade 8. So to help put all of the proficiency information in context, what we can do is we can look at national percentile information. So we can see how the students in your district, in District 25, how their performance compares to that of students in the nation. So if we look at the national percentile information for the spring map, and we compare that for different local percentiles, we can then try to answer that question of how do the students, how does the student achievement here in the district compare to that of students in the nation? So what we did is we looked at the district scores that correspond to the local 25th, the local 50th, and the local 75th percentile, and then we found the corresponding national percentile. So what you see here on this particular slide, you see the information. The red line depicts the local 25th percentile, the green line depicts the local 50th percentile, and the blue line depicts the local 75th percentile. So the average student in the district is represented by the local 50th percentile. So you can see that the local 50th percentile maps to the 72nd percentile in the nation, and I'm actually focused right now on that last row that summarizes the information. So what that means is that the average student in the district is performing better than 72% of the students in the nation. When you look at the local 25th percentile, you can see that it's about at the 50th national percentile, which means that those students perform better than about 50% of the students in the nation. When you look at the local 75th percentile, you can see that to the nation that maps to the 87th percentile. So the students there are performing better than 87% of the students in the nation. So collectively, what this is telling us is that your students are performing better than the average student in the nation in mathematics. So when we look at the same information for reading, we're looking at those 3 different local percentiles. Thank you. For reading, you can see same story, that the students are performing better than the students in the nation. If you look at the average student in the district, again, is at that local 50th percentile, so that's that green line. And you can see that at the nation, that maps to about the 72nd percentile, which again means that the average student in the district is performing better than 72% of the students in the nation. Even if you look at the local 25th percentile, so the students that are on that lower end of achievement in your district, to the nation, that maps around the 50th, the 49th percentile. So again, collectively, this information is telling us that the students, in terms of their achievement, you're doing much better than the average student in the nation. Okay, so now we're going to switch a little bit and we're going to talk about growth. Yeah. Okay, so when it comes to looking at growth on these academic assessments, what's important to keep in mind is what we call a projected versus an actual framework. So in order to measure growth on an academic assessment, we have to first be able to predict or project where a student is going to score. And once we have that information, then when a student actually takes the test, like the spring map assessment, we can ask the question of how close did the student get to what we projected or predicted for the student. In terms of how we come up with that projection for a student, it's important to note that it is personalized to each student, and it is based on multiple data points from the past. So I really liked 4th grade, so I use 4th grade as my example, but if I'm in your district and I'm in 4th grade, the question then is, what assessments did Eleni take when she was in 3rd grade? So if I took fall, winter, spring, I took the map test and as well as the state test at the end of the year, we're gonna look at all that information in 3rd grade, plus the local norms that we've established for your district for 4th grade, and that's how we're going to come up with that projection for me for the 4th grade test. Once I take the test, we're going to then ask the question of how close did Eleni get to that projected score. So if we predicted that I was going to get a 200 and I actually scored a 200, my growth score is going to be 0. It doesn't mean that I'm not growing, it just means I'm growing in alignment with my past and your local norms for 4th grade. So once we have growth at the individual student level, then what we can do is we can average or aggregate, thank you, those growth scores to then come up with a group growth score. So the question becomes, how do we interpret that group growth score? So we color code the information to help with interpretation, and so what you see here on this slide in that growth inference column are the colors that you would see next to the group growth scores. So whenever you see a growth score and you see the color blue, what that means is that the group is growing higher than expected. Green means that the group is growing as expected, and then yellow and red are different levels of growing lower than expected. So we don't like to see yellow and red when we're looking at growth because that means that the group of kids are coming in much lower than what we predicted for them, given their past performance and your local norms. So the way that we come up with those colors is we look at 2 things. The first thing we look at is what's the actual value of that group growth score. So remember that the growth score is going to be centered close to 0 because of what we're doing. We're predicting, and then we're seeing how close did I get to that score. So the question becomes, how much of a shift away from 0 do we want to see to say that we think something educationally relevant is occurring with the group of kids? So we're a research firm, so we looked at the educational research to answer that question, and the number is a 0.3. That's kind of that magic number that if you see that the growth score for the group is starting to get away from that 0.3 in a positive or a negative way, there's evidence to say something other than what we're expecting happened with this group of kids. We also do what we call a statistical significance test to see, is that growth score really different from 0, or could it just be due to random fluctuations that do occur in the scores? So it has to pass both of those tests, if you will, before we change the color from green to blue or green to yellow or green to red. Because you have a locally normed model, we start out with the assumption that the growth is going to be in the expected range, and then we look at the value of the growth score to say, can we change that color from green to blue or green to yellow? So you don't have to remember all of that. You can just focus on the colors. Again, the colors are meant to help you with that interpretation. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the growth for the district. So what you see here on this slide is the district level growth for mathematics. Again, this is the spring map data. So at the very top, you see that the growth score is a positive 0.23 and the color is green, which means it's in the expected range. And so what that's telling us is that overall, when it comes to mathematics, the kids are growing as expected. Remember, going down to each individual student, what that means is that I'm keeping pace with my own prior performance and the local norms. When you look at the information, we also have it disaggregated here on this slide by grade level. You can see that, remember, we love seeing blue when it comes to growth. So you can see that there are several grades where we do see that the growth score for the group is blue. And that's for grades 3, 4, and 5. And what you see here is it tells you the student count. That's how many students we have individual student growth scores for. We also overlay the proficiency or the benchmark information. That's that percent that are meeting the benchmark. That's the proficiency information there. At the very end, that growth effect size, that would be for the entire group. That's the average or the aggregate. You also have columns there for high growth, expected growth, and low growth. And that shows you for the individual students what percent are in each of those categories. And so you have some really good growth at the end of the year. Again, this is using the map data, and that is giving us evidence that the group of kids, there's been enough of a shift there for those grade levels that there's an impact. Something is working for those kids because they're outpacing where we predicted they were going to score given their past performance and your local norms. And then you do see that for the other grades, it's in the expected range. The good news is there's no yellow or red. We are coming out of a pandemic, and we did see that last year there was a lot of pockets of yellow and red in school systems, so that's good news. So now let's take a look at reading. So this is the overall growth score for reading. You can see it's green, which means it's in the expected range. And when you look at the grade levels, you can see that grades 4 and 5, from my lens, I have no idea why we're seeing that, but when I see blue, I get excited because there's something impactful happening, and you have it for grades 4 and 5 for both math and reading. So that's really good, and the work then would become going in and looking at the different buildings to see, is it happening in all the buildings, is it just some of the buildings, and why is that? Because we want that to continue. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to talk about student groups. And what you see here on this slide, we are looking at mathematics, and these are the student groups that you report to the state on your demographic roster. So in that first column where it's labeled group, you see the higher level category of the group. In the second column where it says student groups, I'm going to just stick to the first 2 rows. For an example, we're looking at ELL students. And so the first row then tells us the information for the students that are designated as ELL. The second row would be the information for students that are not designated as ELL. You can see the student count. The percent that met the benchmark is important to look at because this is where we can see if a gap is there for the achievement, the proficiency gap, which we know exists. That's why we look at these student groups. We're trying to close those gaps. So you can see that there is a gap there between the students that are designated as ELL and not ELL. So then what you want to do is you want to go all the way to the end. In that last column, what you want to see is there a potential growth gap there? And you would know if you had a growth gap if the group that has historically underperformed, in this example, the ELL students, if you see a yellow or a red next to that growth score. So we don't see that, which is good. We see a green for both groups, the ELL and the not ELL. And what that's telling us is that both groups are growing as expected. But what we like to point out, though, when we talk about these student groups, though, is if both of the groups are growing as expected, what that means is that gap in achievement is just holding steady. It's not getting better, it's not getting worse, but it's just holding steady. So the only way to see evidence that gap will start to close is to see blue next to the group that's historically underperformed. So that's what we would like to start seeing next to some of these groups where we have these gaps. If you just if you're in that percent that met the benchmark column and you just kind of scan your eye down, you can see that the IEP students compared to the not IEP students, that's the most significant gap that you have there. Okay. All right, now we're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to look at reading. And so when we look at the information for reading, again, we can look at that percent that are meeting the benchmark column to see what the gap is there. So you can see the difference between your ELL and your not ELL students, 16% to 54%. That's that gap in achievement. What we don't want to see is a growth gap. When we see that both groups have the same color, which is green there, they're growing as expected. That's good because there's a growth gap, but it just means that achievement gap is just holding steady. And then if you kind of scan down that percent that are meeting the benchmark column, you can see that the IEP students in reading as well, that seems to be the largest gap there that you have for both math and reading. It would be those students. So that's the group that you really would like to start seeing some blue as you kind of continue to monitor these results. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit more about academic return on investment. And so when you're thinking of academic return on investment, what you're trying to do is you're trying to quantify the impact of an investment on student growth above and beyond what would have happened anyway. And so what we do see is that districts will often ask the question of how did students in the program grow? And that's really not the best way to look at academic ROI. The way you really want to address academic ROI is to ask the question that you see there, which is how did students in the program grow compared to how they would have grown without the program? So remember that what our analytics are doing is we're projecting where a student is going to score based on their history and your local norms. So if you're placing a student in an intervention or some other type of program, what's the magic color that you want to see next to their growth score? If it's having an impact, it's going to be blue, because that means that they are scoring a lot higher than what we predicted, and there's evidence that whatever you're doing for that student is having a meaningful impact. So now let's go ahead and look at some of your programs for math, and again, this is looking at spring NWA MAP data, and you can see that in this particular slide, we're looking at students that are in advanced math courses and students that are not in the advanced math courses. So if you look at the percent that met the benchmark, you can see that the students that are in your advanced math courses, just about all of them are meeting that benchmark, 99%. The students that are not in the advanced math courses, it's 31%. And then when you look at the growth rates for the two groups, the students that are in those advanced math courses, because we see that blue next to that group growth score, that's telling us that those kids are growing higher at a lot higher rates. When you look at the math intervention, which is the last two rows, the students that are receiving a math intervention, about 2% of them are meeting the benchmark compared to 45% that are not in a math intervention. So that tells me, I don't know how you're selecting kids to go into these interventions, but that tells me that you're placing the right students in the intervention. When you look at the growth for both groups, it's green for both groups, but it is trending higher for the students, actually for both groups, but especially the kids that are in the math intervention. And I know that because of the value of the growth score is a positive 0.29. So if you remember, positive 0.3 is kind of that number that we're looking for. So what that does tell me is that when you, and again, the team, the building leaders and the district leaders have access to information here where they could disaggregate. It would be important to go and disaggregate the kids that are in this reading intervention to see, because there might be some pockets of blue there once you start doing that. So there's definitely potential ROI there for that math intervention. Okay, now we're going to look at the same information for reading. And so for reading, the very two rows on top, you've got the students that are in advanced language arts courses. And you could see that similar to the math, 99% of them are meeting the proficiency benchmark compared to 43% of the students that are not in advanced language arts that are meeting the benchmark. Both groups are growing at similar rates because I see green next to the growth score. However, the students that are in the advanced language arts that are tagged as yes, their growth score is trending much higher because of that positive 0.28, so it's getting close to that positive 0.3. So now when we look at the kids that are in a reading intervention, when we look at the difference in that the percent meeting the benchmark, the students that are in an intervention, as expected, fewer of them are meeting the proficiency benchmark, which is why you're trying to intervene with those students. The growth score for those kids is green, but it is starting to trend higher. It's a positive 0.23, so there is some potential ROI there as well. Okay. And so just to kind of summarize, so some of the things we've talked about. So the first thing that is important in terms of the context is that your students here in District 25 do significantly outperform the nation in both math and reading. Overall district level growth is consistent with pre-pandemic norms, and they are pre-pandemic norms. We just started the partnership, but the norms that we built, we collected several years of historical data, and they are based on pre-pandemic norms. So that's important. The growth is significantly higher than expected in several grades in math, and we saw that in reading as well. When you look at your student groups, we see this in all districts across the state of Illinois as well as the nation. There are proficiency gaps there. However, those student groups are growing at similar rates, but what is important to keep in mind is that to start closing those gaps, you really want the lower performing groups to start growing at higher rates. And when it comes to the students in the advanced math courses, they are growing at higher rates. The students in the math interventions are growing at expected rates, but they're definitely trending higher. And then similarly for the advanced language arts courses, they're growing at expected rates but trending higher. And students in the reading interventions are growing at expected rates but trending higher as well. So I think that that's all that I had to share, but I would like to see if you had any questions for me at this point.
Thank you so much for that summary of kind of going through everything with us.
Pardon?
Questions from the board?
Yes.
Yeah. Board members, any questions, discussions?
I'll just jump in quickly and, again, thank you, Eleni. This is good information for us from instructional perspective, especially as Dr. Speron talks about, these are pre-pandemic norms, right? So these aren't adjusted norms of expected learning with the pandemic being a reason of that. It's if the pandemic never existed, here's the norms that our students were scored on in the past before that pandemic, and we're still doing well compared to those after the pandemic. As we've discussed with the board, right, we've got a 3-year plan in place of interventions and supports, but I'm super excited and maybe not surprised, but just so crazy proud of our teachers because the work they're doing especially those interventions that the board supported us putting in place, are having the impact we need them to have to help kids get back to where they were pre-pandemic.
No, for sure. Thank you, Dr. Vine, for that. And Dr. Sparren, you know, it was really when you had mentioned that our students outperform students in the nation. We're very proud of that, and I echo Dr. Vine. We're very proud of our educators and our students for working so hard. And it takes a village to raise children, and all the parents and grandparents and everybody working so hard to make that happen and make a reality. And definitely, we're very aware of those gaps, and to kind of highlight those gaps, because not only do we want only some students to do well, we want each of our students in all groups and all marginalized groups to do well in our district. So thank you for bringing that up as well. And so the supports that were put in place are going to be important. Thank you, Dr. Sparren. Any other comments from the board? Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next up we have business and finance topic about presentation of bond sale options that Ms. Malik will talk to us about.
So Elizabeth Hennessy from Raymond James is here with us tonight. Just to give the board some conceptual ideas of, should the referendum pass, that there would be options in terms of the bond sale ultimately. No decisions would be made at this time. Decisions obviously would come at a later date, but just to give you an idea how you can start thinking and processing conceptually what we might do in the future.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
And I brought books in case you want to look at the small print later.
So I can do this, or you just aim it over there at the door, because that's where the, okay. Just click that. Right.
The right one, yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you again for having me tonight. So I'm going to start with a bond market update. Interest rates have been in the news, as you know. Yesterday, the Fed raised rates 50 basis points. So this graph shows interest rates for the municipal bond rates for the AAA Municipal Market Data Index, as well as the 10-year Treasury rate. So the purple line is the one-year rate. The red line is the 10-year municipal market rate. The blue line is the 10-year Treasury rate. And the yellow line is the 30-year. So we start back in January of 2019. And that's kind of where this graph has started. I mean, rates were kind of the same before that, back into 2018. But rates came down, and then we hit the pandemic. They zoomed up 200 basis points. The Fed stepped in, lowered interest rates down to 0 for the Fed funds rate. And then interest rates stayed low, hitting an all-time low point in August of 2020. Since January, and since some of these higher inflation numbers have come out, we've seen interest rates go up quickly. So since January, interest rates are on average up over 150 basis points, or 1.5%. But if you see this graph, rates are still a little bit lower than they were in January of 19. So whereas they've gone up, we expect perhaps for them to go up a little higher yet with whatever the Fed does. The Fed's expected to raise rates at every one of their meetings. A lot of that is already built into the bond market. So for example, yesterday when the Fed raised rates 50 basis points, because they telegraphed that message so thoroughly, the municipal market didn't move at all. Today was kind of a wiggly day if you looked at the news. Stock market was down, Treasury rates were up. But this is all kind of moving. The whole question is, how much more are rates going to go up? So when we do options for you for looking at the bond issue and how much it might cost taxpayers, we always put a healthy cushion in there, and we are no different in the options you're going to see tonight. Typically, we put a full 1% cushion in the interest rate, and you'll see that in the options. So we want to make sure we're as realistic as possible. We're doing our best to understand what's going on in the market, and there's a lot of very smart people and economists who we have information to draw upon. So, okay, here's the outstanding bonds. The district has 4 outstanding bonds, 2 of which will be repaid as of December 1. That's a 2015 and 16 will be paid off. 2017 and 18 bonds go out to the year 2031. The district's debt limit is very large at $108,264,852. That's your net debt limit based on the 2020 equalized assessed value and the current principal of the bonds outstanding. Whoops, okay. So, just to recap, the district has proposed $75 million in capital spending and a referendum to the voters in June of this year. It will include additions to accommodate full-day kindergarten and will occur over a 5-year period of time from 22 to 27 capital projects. Full-day kindergarten additions will kick off first, and so that's why I understand you're bringing the referendum now so you can get those open in August of 2024 for children. The infrastructure improvements included in the referendum include life safety, HVAC, boilers, electrical, roofing, plumbing, security, paving, and gym expansions at Westgate and Dryden to support the building functionality, and these will occur over the next 5 years in coordination with those full-day kindergarten expansions. So the referendum bonds may be issued as early as August of 22 or in pieces over a 5-year period following approval of the referendum. So your construction timeline is very important for when we issue the bonds. The following options are going to look at one option issuing all $75 million at once in August of 22 versus issuing $60 million in August of 22 and $15 million in June of 25. So that would also work with your construction schedule, and there may be more options as we go through this. But the one thing to keep in mind as we look at these options, whenever you issue bonds, you need to expect to spend 5% of the proceeds in 6 months and 85% of the proceeds within 3 years after the issuance of that bond. Okay. All right, so the first option is $75 million issued all at once in August of 22. The payments on the bonds are level, meaning like a mortgage, principal and interest payments are the same every single year. So there will not be any escalation in those payments. If your tax base gets bigger, everybody's slice of the debt payment will get smaller. If it goes the other way, the opposite happens. But I think it's important to know that this is a very conservative schedule that is over 20 years meets the average life of your projects, which are going to be well in excess of 20 years when you're talking about bricks and mortar building, right? Okay, so the tax rate increase is about 26.3 cents estimated right now, and about $313 on the $400,000 home. The numbers we've used here include current interest rates as of March 31, plus a 50 basis point cushion. So here's the option if we issue $60 million in August of 22 and then come back in 25 in June and issue the remaining $15 million. In this case, we also have level debt payments. So when the two payment structures are put together, it's again level payments like a mortgage, each issue over 20 years. Because the issues are spread out, and we're not paying interest on the 15 million portion of the bonds right away, we're going to have a little bit lower interest costs, but of course it depends what interest rates do in the future. But the annual payments of the combined issuance is $5,220,000 on average, or a 24.7 tax rate, and the payment in this scenario would be $293 a year for that $400,000 market value home. So here we've got our interest rates plus a cushion for the Series 22, and then for the Series 25, we've got a bigger cushion of 1.5%, simply because that's further out, and we just don't know what's going to happen then. So just a little discussion about the pluses and minuses of each of these options. Whoops. So issuing the full $75 million at once reduces interest rate risk for the future, because you're locking in the rate. We don't have to wait till 25 to issue the other piece and have uncertainty about what that interest rate might be. The other advantage is you're going to earn more interest on the investment of proceeds. So that can help with the construction costs. The important thing to remember, as I mentioned, we've got to be able to meet that 3-year spending schedule. So if your spending schedule is going to take longer than 3 years, we're probably more likely looking at option 2. So option 2 is the $60 million in August of 22 and $15 million in June of 25. So the advantage of this is lower annual payment and tax impact with the ability to spread each issue over 20 years. But the negative is that you have interest rate risk on the second $15 million issued in 2025. The good news on this option is a majority of the issue, the $60 million, is in 22, but you still have some interest rate risk on that $15 million piece. It's easier to meet these arbitrage spend down requirements in this case if your projects take over the 5 years as we're expecting. The negative would be less earnings on the investment of proceeds. So I'll pause there and see if you have any questions.
Liz, am I correct in looking at these options? The other difference is the first option, the bonds would be paid off 2 years earlier than the second option. So it does.
That's correct.
Doing the split does extend it a couple years.
Yes, because each issuance is 20 years, so altogether 22.
Madam President? So in either of these options, in either one, for any number of reasons that we could dream up, do you have to spend it all? So if we went 75 and there, you know, this fanciful scenario where construction costs are half, right? Now we have, does it go back to the taxpayer? Or if we went in the second scenario, 60, and now we don't need that extra 15 for some reason. So can you talk to me how does that work?
So there's a couple answers, I think, it's a couple questions, and so let me, firstly, you don't have to issue it all. If a miracle happens and construction costs go down, or if you get to 25 and you realize state just came up with construction grants, now we don't have to issue this last piece or something like that. So you don't have to issue it all, and in fact, after that 5-year period, it's unlikely you would be able to issue that authority if you hadn't done it by then. Second question, if you issue the bonds and you have the proceeds and now you don't need them because construction costs come in better than expected, you can abate those dollars back to the taxpayers. So you can reduce people's taxes by that amount that you borrowed. Mm-hmm.
And again, I just want to emphasize, these were two kind of models Liz and I discussed. They're not the only two options. They're just kind of examples that should the referendum pass and we have those conversations coming back, those are the factors that will be important as we make those decisions.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all the proactive research. You know, we have been looking at these issues and these questions for months and months and months now. This whole year we've been looking at every angle and the financial angle. So thank you for the research that continues to inform our decisions to make the best decision for the community and sending back out the referendum to the whole community to decide. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Liz.
Talk to you soon.
The next item on the agenda is the 2022-2023 Nsseo budget, which is an action item. I need a motion, please.
Madam President,
Yes, Greg.
I move that the Board of Education approve the Nsseo budget resolution for the 2022-2023 school year.
Thank you, Greg.
Second.
Thank you, Brian. And Stacy?
I presented this at the last meeting. There's no changes, no information that impacts that conversation at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, discussion about this item? No? Lana, if you could please take us to a vote.
Member Jogi?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Member Conley?
Yes.
Member Cherniglia?
Yes.
Thank you, Lana. Next item we have is Music for Youth contract, which is also an action item. Please could I have a motion?
Madam President.
Yeah.
I move that the Board of Education approve the proposed agreement for music services with Music for Youth of Arlington Heights for the 2022-2023 through 2024-2025 school years.
Thank you, Greg. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Chad. And Brian, you're right. It is very appropriate that our resident musician board member make that motion and that action item. So.
Yeah.
Perfect day. This is all coming together nicely. Stacy.
Again, this was presented at the last meeting and just brought here at this point for a vote. No changes.
Yeah, the only
Correct.
thing I will add, because you notice that it does say amended document, is it was just the appendix or the appendix? Exhibit on the contract is just updated description of Music for Youth. It doesn't impact the cost in any way.
Thank you. The next item is, oh, sorry, we didn't vote. Lana, could you please call the vote?
And Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Start. Member Conley?
Yes.
Member Cherniglia?
Yes.
Member Jogi?
Yes, thank you, Lana. And now we can go to the curriculum equity audit. This is an informational item that Dr. Fitzpatrick, and as she comes up, I have to say our board is really proud of our equity-focused strategic plan. And this equity audit is going to continue to inform our work in the district to set the direction for the district. So thank you to our presenters today.
And it's one of you.
One of us will have to
We'll
click
take
it,
turns,
maybe.
yeah.
Hopefully make it work.
Okay.
Just put it here.
Okay.
All right, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, as the board may recall, we embarked on a curriculum equity audit following the board's adoption of a diversity, equity, and inclusion policy and the new District 25 strategic plan, which incorporates an equity lens. The scope of this audit was to review our library media center collections and our literacy and social studies curricula. The audit is a starting point for examining our curricular materials and instructional practices and is guiding our work to support diversity and cultural competence. Joining me tonight to provide an update on the audit are representatives from Public Consulting Group, Sydney Menzen to my left, project coordinator, and Mary Ellen Hannon, subject matter expert. And at this point, I'll turn it over to them.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Fitzpatrick. All right, let's begin. So to quickly run through our agenda, we just heard from Dr. Fitzpatrick. So first we're going to talk about our equity audit process and methodology, followed by positive practices and highlights, and then recommendations. We'll talk about our action planning process, next steps, and then leave time for questions and discussion. So we wanted to begin by introducing you all to our full team, because while Mary Ellen and I are here as the representatives of Public Consulting Group this evening, there were a total of 6 of us working on this project. So to begin, we have Anna D'Entremont, who is an associate manager at PCG, and she's been with the firm for over a decade. Anna leads our education strategies business line, which includes our strategy and equity-focused projects. Anna served as the project advisor for this audit, overseeing the entire project from start to finish and providing support as needed. Next, we have myself, Sydney Menzin, project manager, and I was charged with overseeing all project management processes as well as our quality assurance systems, keeping our team on track and working closely with Dr. Fitzpatrick to ensure that we were meeting district expectations and needs. Next, we have Mary Ellen Hannon, who served as subject matter expert. Mary Ellen brings over 30 years of education and curriculum experience and expertise, previously serving roles as curriculum director, assistant superintendent of curriculum, and district superintendent in public school systems across New Hampshire. Next, we have Mary Baker Budisa, who also served as subject matter expert. I just want to go back and say what Mary Ellen did for this project. Apart from her expertise, she led the review for the ELA and reading and social studies units for the elementary school level. She also facilitated stakeholder engagement, including focus groups and interviews, and led the analysis of district and board policies related to curriculum. So I'd be remiss to leave that out. So next, Mary Baker Budisa, subject matter expert. She led our LMC review. Mary has over 10 years of working in education and has deep content expertise in culturally responsive practices, as well as leads educators in supporting diverse learners. Next, we have Dr. Tanisha Brooks, another subject matter expert, and Dr. Brooks led the review of the ELA reading and social studies units at the middle school level. Dr. Brooks has deep expertise in curriculum at the school, district, and state Department of Education levels, and most recently has supported struggling school districts in Michigan with data analysis and curriculum alignment. And last but not least, we have Isabel Blair, who served as project support and data analyst, and she supported the LMC review, stakeholder engagement, and action planning. So now that you've got a pretty good sense of who worked on this project, we'll jump into our equity audit framework and methodology. So we wanted to start by presenting PCG's commitment to educational equity. So PCG approached this project from an equity lens, and to us, that means considering the unique needs of each student in this district. Let's see. There we go. So we apply this framework and this lens to our equity curriculum audit process. And I'll get into more detail in the next slide, but just a quick overview. We kick things off with a project launch, followed by data collection and analysis, and then a curriculum analysis, which culminated in a final report and executive summary that included findings and recommendations from our audit. And then most recently, we worked on action planning following the delivery of this report. So what did all of these phases entail? So back in August 2021, we kicked off the project with Dr. Fitzpatrick reviewing the work plan, confirming timelines, and setting expectations for the work ahead. This was then followed by data collection and analysis, where PCG worked with the district to engage stakeholders from across the community to facilitate conversations through focus groups and interviews with groups such as students, teachers, principals, and central office staff. Questions helped PCG to identify current curriculum and curricular practices that promote equity in the school district. Following this activity, we jumped into the curriculum analysis, reviewing units from literacy and social studies curriculum across elementary levels as well as middle school levels. Following this analysis, PCG provided recommendations about how to increase representation within the curriculum, and this was delivered in the form of a final report. Following the final report, PCG facilitated action planning. So this involves creating a repository of tools and resources to help the Department of Student Learning related to professional learning as well as curriculum selection and more. So at the end of March, our team from PCG came down and facilitated 2 half-day working sessions with the Department of Student Learning team. And that brings us to today. So quickly, just to provide an overview of our methodology, you can see here an extensive list of the different documents that our team reviewed. I'd just like to emphasize that, you know, from leadership policies and practices all the way through curriculum units and more, the focus was on curriculum and curricular practices in this review. And here we have a quick overview of our stakeholder engagement. So as you can see, which I've noted before, some different groups that we were able to engage in focus groups and interviews. PCG facilitated a total of 10 focus groups and 8 interviews with a total of 41 participants from members across the school district. And these sessions were held virtually during the school day, after school, and in the evenings.
Excellent, thank you. So before I talk about our findings and things that we found to be really positive and some highlights, as well as some of our recommendations, I just wanted to thank Dr. Fitzpatrick's team. We were totally asking them for so much information. They provided us access to all of the curricular documents, as well as policies, as well as any other different types of workshops that were led or whatever. So we were kind of a pain early on because we kept asking for more and more, and they were so pleasant and so great to work with. We do this work all over the country, so it is, we know that we can be a little bit of a nudge initially, but we were so pleased with how quickly the district responded. So we wanted to start with some positive practices and highlights that we found from the curriculum audit there. The first component was your strategic plan. It is rare for us to be working with a district that already has what they're thinking about for moving forward over the next 3 to 5 years. And your plan was already in place, and it was something that was helpful for us to see the threads of equity throughout that piece. So it made it really easy to see where all those connections were. The next component was pacing guides, and I have a little story to tell about that. When we were interviewing elementary students, first of all, parents were involved. So parents, you could see them hovering around to see, why are my kids at night on a computer looking at these strange people? Anyway, great, however. And kids were eating, snacking, talking. It was a wonderful experience. However, they started talking from different schools about some of the stories that they were reading. They were 5th graders, and they were reading the same things. And they were talking about how they were, oh yeah, we're going to do that tomorrow. These children did not know each other, and they were engaging in conversations about what they were learning in different schools, but in the same place. Meaning your pacing guides work really well, because I'm going to tell you, as a former superintendent, I used to pray that my pacing guides worked really well. And they were really amazing, and it was delightful talking with your kids. And the level of teacher planning materials that you all have to provide resources, teachers talked about that there were so many, it was hard for them even to get themselves to wrap their head around everything that they had, because there were so many resources provided by the department as well as by the materials that you have adopted. Staff commitment was so high. There was nobody who told us in our focus groups and interviews, oh, we're not really interested in this. It was such high interest. We want to learn more. We want to be able to make sure we're meeting our students' needs and every student in our classroom, and we want to do it right. So there was a lot of positive engagement in that. Which button do I click on this? The red? Oh, the middle? Great.
Right.
This one? Okay, there you go. Bring that left, right. Another component was student experiences. There were, especially in the TCI social studies, there's a Spanish version. There are supports for students with disabilities or for English language learners, and therefore it was multilingual students. It was a lot of opportunity for kids to have similar experiences there. There were also, which was really interesting with the digital version of your social studies, is that when new events are happening, they actually send updates to the curriculum in the digital format so that there's always updating. When you have a hard copy and you're buying a book, which is also nice, but you don't get that till you get a new book, right? So 5 years later, then they update it. But they do ongoing updates and give the teachers a notification that it has been updated, which was awesome because, you know, history is changing right before our eyes. As for LMCs, but all of the schools talked about how both the teachers and their students give them information to be able to say, here are things we're working on, here's things we're interested in. LMC directors keep a list of that and are then using that to help inform their next year's books that they're ordering based on what they're hearing from the schools that they're at. And then finally, there's a really great experience about Meet the Authors that has been happening, where they bring in authors who have written some books, and then those authors talk about those experiences, and they're authors of multicultural, different places and different opportunities and things that they've experienced, and that was talked about by a lot of people, so a really great highlight there. Part of our opportunity here is to provide some recommendations for areas of growth. Curriculum is evolving. You're always getting new curriculum. You're always looking for what's going to happen. I know math is coming up, so you know, there's a lot of opportunity to say, the next time we want to do this, or can we add some books here? And that's kind of what we did when we gave the recommendations, is we really were not looking at as a, these are really bad, but here's some ways to grow as you move forward and align to your strategic plan. So first of all, about the curriculum adoption process. So we see equity as like a three-tier piece. It means that it's access for all students, for every student, whether they are students with disabilities, multilingual learners, whether they are students of color, have different religious backgrounds, that every student should have access to instruction and to the materials that are available, and therefore that it is about equal access and providing that. So one of our recommendations is to update the curriculum rubric. We gave a lot of resources, including the rubric that we used in order to do the audit, so that you can take pieces of it and do whatever you want. But we thought it was a really good opportunity to update it with some intentional focus on equity to align to your strategic plan. We also want to make sure that every student has access to culturally responsive instruction, to that, we're going to talk a little bit about another slide or two about windows and mirrors, that they're actually able to see themselves in what they're reading, but also learn about other people through those windows, the windows to global events. And that's really important to grow citizens, is that they see themselves as well as learn about others. And then finally, to consider setting aside additional funding for supplemental books and materials that go along with the curriculum that you have for addition. You have a really strong reading program, ELA program, and what we heard from students were that in their classrooms that they do have an opportunity to read a lot of books, so that sometimes the selection gets thinner as the year progresses because they don't have as many books anymore because they've read them. So to be able to add those books would be really, really helpful. I'm trying to click. The next one is about diversity in book collections. As I said, to consider the concept of windows and mirrors, mirrors and windows, so that you have a variety of books, so that if you have students with different religions, religious backgrounds, or different cultures, that they're able to see themselves in books that they may take out of the LMCs, and at the same time be able to learn about other cultures, therefore just adding to the collection in that way. Also to provide teachers with a rubric to review and expand their own library collection. Teachers said, we want to add more books and different books, we just need some supports around that. So are there lists of how to go about looking at your own library in your classroom so that they can add books that students would want to read? Interestingly enough, we gave the district a lot of different opportunities to have some rubrics there, so you can take it for yourself. And then to examine the diversity of the characters and authors. One of our findings that we found were that, especially in lower elementary, there were very few families that were not the typical two parents and a white family, and the authors were also white, typically male. So to kind of give some more diversity with that would be really helpful. And we actually brought a book during our session that we did for action planning called Hair Love, which was a book about an African-American family that the little girl was just trying to have her dad help her with her hair. And it was just a really cute story. I hope you all get to see it. It's award-winning. Professional learning. Everyone was talking about how they would really like additional professional learning and be able to add to their own understanding of culturally responsive practices. In addition, there were some opportunities to have equity discussion groups in the district before COVID. However, that sort of, with COVID happening, sort of had to be put in the back burner, and they would love to see that come back as well as having any professional development based on the adopted curriculum. So new curriculum being adopted, having a really deep understanding of that curriculum and how to go about teaching in their classroom. One of the things that we talked about to different stakeholder groups was their voice in helping to understand about adoption and providing stakeholders with some voice in that, and even just some of the areas of interest. We've seen other districts do that with surveys, with having multiple layers of different types of curriculum adoption committees that have representatives of parent groups, of school groups, of school board members, so that there is a more stakeholders are heard and there's a more transparent process. There's a lot of material on there. It's just not known by a lot of people there. And then to create a communication plan about what's happening. We talked a little bit about that during our action planning session, that having the messages out there about what is happening and the changes is really important, so that the community all knows what's happening and going on. We also think it would be really helpful to communicate new additions to LMCs. One of the things we heard that as Dr. Bine was reading books to students, that it's almost like, I've heard districts call it, we're blessing this book, or we're taking this book and we're highlighting this book in a way that once you read it and talk about it, students gravitate towards it and want to take a look at it and want to read it themselves again and again. You know, we all read our favorite books over and over again. So by knowing what's out there and knowing what parents know what's out there for existing resources and putting that out there and highlighting new books and resources out in newsletters throughout the district would also give parents an opportunity to also understand the different types of books that are out there, and kids to be able to love new books, so that they actually broaden their reading of different types of books. And then finally, we really believe that having some student and family engagement activities, we call it with an equity lens, but really about bringing in guests and speakers to talk about windows and mirrors and about what that really means, and just sort of educating parents more. We heard that all over the place, that parents just want to learn more and they want to be able to be aware of what's happening. And then at the same time, we also think that we heard a lot about those being able to afford to bring in authors. They're expensive. And to be able to budget and have that, so that all schools in an equitable fashion can have have authors come and share their love of what they wrote and their characters and share that piece. I'm trying. So after we did all that, there was a lot. We heard a lot about, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. So we believe strongly that it's important to action plan. It's important to sit down, take a look at what has all been looked at and reviewed, and prioritize. You cannot do everything at once. You really need a plan moving forward. So we spent 2 half days working with the team and looking at what are the priorities in the district right now based on everything else you've got going, as well as what you have, the time for, and what's the most important to you all to align to your strategic plan. What should be the next steps moving forward? And we worked with the team to identify 3 areas of focus that they'd like to work on. One being professional development of all different groups, beginning with leaders, teachers, parents, so that everybody's growing together in that. The next theme that they identified is updating and taking a look at curricular materials and the curricular process. And the final one was to engage with parents and have them part of the process and having those dialogue and conversations. And to build some action plans around that. We met today with Dr. Fitzpatrick and her team and gave additional tools about how to track that progress, how to be realistic about that project. I mean, when we left, everybody was so excited, and it was like, are we gonna get everything done? And we all chuckled on our way out knowing, we've done this a lot, that that's not gonna happen in the way they want it to happen, but there's such good energy in this room. We left with such positive vibes and such good energy. Sydney was not able to come. I'm just going to tell one more story. She wasn't able to come, and we went back to talk about what an amazing building this is. As I said, we go to schools, districts, state departments all over the country. We're a pretty large consulting group, and we never walk in and see pictures with families talking about the school district, going into the assistant superintendent's office and seeing pictures of real children around the room, to know that that's what you're focusing on. That is the reason for your work. And we couldn't stop talking. We went, oh my gosh, what a wonderful place to send your children if you were a parent. So, because we don't always see that, to be honest. So it was great. It was a great experience for us. Finally, I've talked and told my couple stories. I tried to limit them. We'll take questions and any additional comments or feedback for us.
Thank you so much. This is a really exciting, we get many, many presentations, and you held our attention the whole time. And it was really the work that the Department of Student Learning has done, like you've said, under Becky and the Dr. Fitzpatrick's leadership and everything that it provided you to do your work, to do the data, and to do the analysis. Thank you. I have lots of questions and comments, but I'm going to open it up for my board colleagues first. Questions?
Looks like it's you.
Greg, you good? Okay. If we could go back to the definition that you started with, and because that is so key, that you began this journey for us by opening up with the definition of what equity is, and having a common terminology to launch this work is really important. And that definition really encompasses our mission, right? Our community and our stakeholders came together, village agencies and parents and students, everybody came together to put our mission together for our district, to set the direction of our district, stating that the mission of Arlington Heights School District 25 is to empower an inclusive, diverse community of learners to innovate and thrive as global citizens. And your definition there really is color conscious and really is encompassing of the diversity and the broad student population of our district community. So, sharing that definition with our team and our community, that's a great start, and thank you for doing that. Some questions? I have so many comments, but I'm going to limit them as well, just like you were trying to limit your enthusiasm for it, because this is exciting work. And big applause to our leader, Dr. Bine, for the work that she's done in launching this work for our whole community.
Can I just add one more thing? We also never have the superintendent spend couple hours with us during that time. And Dr. Bine made a time in her schedule to sit with her team and to listen to all of the things that were happening and going on. Also very impressive, because that just shows a commitment from everyone in the district, that everyone is committed to making better. And we had a long conversation about definitions and glossary, about what those are. So you must have been listening there, because we totally believe that that is a really great place to start. Everybody needs to be on the same page.
Right, and everybody, and the board included, we all have to be on the same page. And so that piece about professional development, like we have the intentionality, our staff across the district, like you said, is really motivated to do this work and sees the importance of this work. And that piece of filling those gaps that they, like, we really want to do this, but giving them the toolkit to be able to do this. So I'm so excited that you've launched kind of that work. And I'm also super excited that you said this is the beginning, right? Because you've touched a small portion of the equity work, and really equity work is also the culture that the culture shift that happens. So we're looking at the knowledge, the motivation, and the organization. So we applaud you for this this comprehensive research that you've done. The 66 pages, we read them of information, and in those pages, you talked about the importance of that broad definition of not only racial equity, but religious literacy, and this whole piece, and having that student voice in there, and having that parent voice, and making sure that every student is seen. Because and you also, I think when we have these, the one portion that you talked about that resonated with me, not only as a board member, but as a parent as well, is that sometimes, no matter how much we care about education and how we're education advocates at this table, even we forget that we have to communicate with our teachers to say, hey, this is important to us as a family, right? So to teach not only our staff and our teachers, but to teach our parent groups too, to say, hey, we don't know all the answers, so we really need you to come to us to tell us what's important to you, because we're all learning, we're all at different parts of this journey. The other point that really is important that you brought up is this equity rubric, because we can forget, right, how to do this, but in order to change this mindset is to have this lens, right, and you've training us to have this lens, all of us, every single stakeholder in this district, and this piece of courageous conversations, because without conversation, there can't be trust. And you're launching us on saying, hey, you guys have to talk first. And these are really difficult conversations. We're each at very, very different places, and that's natural, but we have to talk about it because it's important. So I'm glad that you talked about the windows and the mirrors and the courageous conversations, and how this work benefits every single student in this district. Because our goal in District 25 is to cultivate global citizens. And in order to do that, this work impacts each of us, right? And when our students go over to Fortune 500 companies and shoot rockets off to space, they're going to need these skills. So truly a huge applause to your work, to the whole team in District 25 under Dr. Biden's leadership. Thank you.
I just had a question I want to ask Dr. Bine.
Berg, if you pause for 1 second, I'll just tell our audience member that you can always email Dr. Bine and the board at a later date, but we'd love to hear input at a later date. Thank you. Go ahead. And yes, thank you, Melissa. We have community input at the end. We love that.
So, Dr. Bine, I wanted to ask you about, we just had a great presentation about the audit, and then we're going to move into hearing adoption of new curriculum. And could you share with us, how these two things interface? Because the audit is looking back at what we have, but we're talking about adopting a new thing. How do we put those together and move forward?
Yeah, so obviously this will be ongoing work, right? It doesn't, we don't solve our need to grow with adopting a new curriculum, but as we adopt that new curriculum and we take all of this information into consideration, we start to add to that curriculum, right? Review it through a lens that maybe we didn't review it through in the past, and fill any gaps or enhance it as well. So especially in the literacy, language arts area, when we're talking about contents and adopting curriculum, making sure, as our esteemed experts shared with us, that those materials have that mirror, have that lens. And I know the board read the report and saw what they referenced in some of the lower grades, like in first grade, and when they audited first grade materials, they didn't see much diversity in the materials, in the literacy materials that kids were using. But Mary Ellen, as she did her audit and the team put it in the report, you see that that diversity of materials starts to grow at the 4th grade level where they looked at materials, and when they looked at the 8th grade, there was a really wealthy range of diversity. So, so using their information as we continue to move forward and purchase materials to support the ELA adoption, we'll look through that lens and expand that diversity and that equity that our youngest children will see in their materials.
Thank you. So just one more final thought is that, you talked about how the action plan has to be measurable, right? This is a great conversation, and this looks really great in the 66 pages of the report, right? It looks great, but we have to make it actionable. We have to measure it so that every single student benefits from it. So thank you for including that. And Hair Love is a great book. You're right. Thank you so much for being here today with us. And we will move on to the next topic item.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is the elementary math curriculum adoption. And I think Dr. Fitzpatrick will take us through that with our own resident experts too. Thank you.
And to our staff that's helping present tonight, thank you for your patience. You know, it's a late night for you to be here. We appreciate it.
All right. Well, on to bigger and better things. On to elementary math. So thank you for this opportunity to share with you our recommendation for an updated elementary math curriculum for District 25. As part of our curriculum cycle, we formed a committee this past fall to study best practices and review our current curriculum. And we have information to share with you about our work's connection to the strategic plan, the committee, our timeline, professional learning, the resource we are recommending, its cost, and the impact the resource has already had on our students in our classrooms. Joining me tonight is Lisa Sidlowski, our math coordinator, also known as the Westgate Wolverine from the ABC 25 Get Burbed Challenge.
I feel unmasked now.
Take it away,
Thank
Lisa.
you. Good evening. I am excited to be with you today to talk about math instruction in our elementary schools and our Math Review Committee's recommendation to update our curriculum to Math in Focus 2020. I'd like to start with sharing how this resource supports our strategic plan. In Arlington Heights School District 25, we empower an inclusive, diverse community of learners to innovate and thrive as global citizens. Through our math instruction at the elementary level, we use an innovative, concrete, pictorial, and abstract approach that enables us to better meet the needs of all students. This focus on building conceptual understanding and flexible thinking creates an inclusive classroom environment where all students are invited to apply their thinking through authentic, real-life learning opportunities. Students develop resilience and perseverance in their learning through problem solving, which increases their engagement and ownership. This school year, our elementary math entered the action plan phase of our typical curriculum review cycle. A committee was developed to analyze our current resources, research best practices, and develop an action plan to continue improving our math instruction. The committee was intentionally designed to be balanced with at least 2 teacher representatives from each school. This included 1 primary teacher and 1 intermediate teacher. Across the district, we had at least 2 teachers represented from each grade level, as well as a special education teacher from our IS program. and a multilingual teacher from an E+ classroom. Administration representatives included one elementary principal, our advanced learning coordinator, our assistant superintendent of student learning, and the math coordinator. That's me. Due to the significant changes that were made to the Math in Focus curriculum with the updated edition, the committee decided to pilot Math in Focus 2020 this year. The committee participated in professional learning on using the resource and also took part in extensive professional learning on best practices in math education and general instructional practices. Many of our conversations centered around the importance of creating an environment where all students are invited to be math thinkers rather than just computers, as well as the professional learning resources and support teachers would need to create that environment. The committee is recommending updating to Math in Focus 2020, but also recommends continuing professional learning around best practices and general instructional techniques to support us in creating an inclusive math environment that encourages critical thinking, problem solving, and application. During the 22-23 school year, next year, all elementary teachers will receive training on best practices in math education, while the Math Review Committee receives further training on guided math and differentiation and supports implementation. The focus on building the capacity of our teachers will prepare us for a successful launch of the updated curriculum in the 23-24 school year. Front-loading the professional learning will allow teachers to try innovative teaching practices with materials they are familiar with, and will also allow us to prioritize collaboration during the implementation year. The Math Review Committee helped to identify areas in which their colleagues and they themselves need professional learning. These areas include training related to inclusive teaching practices, the standards for mathematical practice, fostering student thinking and collaboration, problem solving, differentiation, and guided math. In the 22-23 school year, members of the Math Review Committee will be involved in these trainings for elementary teachers, while they are also continuing in their own professional learning. During the 23-24 school year, we will continue our learning around guided math, differentiation, and inclusive teaching practices, but we'll also have opportunities for teacher collaboration so that teachers can support one another while using the updated curriculum. This will also provide our Math Review Committee members with an opportunity to be leaders among their colleagues in this professional learning. The committee also identified some key areas where the updated curriculum will better support an inclusive classroom environment that fosters deep mathematical thinking. Embedded within every section of Math in Focus 2020 is an enhanced resource to support advanced learners, students that need additional support, and multilingual learners. There are recommendations for differentiation for whole group instruction as well as for independent practice. There are also new embedded opportunities in every section for students to engage in math conversations. These conversations foster a student's ability to collaborate with peers, think critically about math concepts, apply their learning, and prove their thinking. Math discourse is also an important open-ended entryway that allows all students to participate in learning together. In addition to the performance tasks that are embedded in our current edition, there is a new STEAM component in the updated edition. STEAM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Math, and these cross-curricular tasks engage students in authentic, real-life learning opportunities that will enhance their understanding of and ability to use math concepts. In this updated edition, Math in Focus is also now housed on a digital platform. In addition to the print materials, teachers may assign differentiated tasks and receive immediate feedback to inform their instruction. Students have access to the digital edition, lesson videos, games, and virtual manipulatives. Families can also access the digital platform in a family room that provides information to enhance family engagement and partnership in their child's learning. The materials for the Math Review Committee to continue piloting the resource is $36,480. Teacher materials include manuals, assessment books, fact fluency, Blackline Masters, and math manipulatives. The Department of Student Learning currently has an annual budget of $115,000 for math workbooks. Rather than continuing to pay annually for workbooks, we will purchase a 6-year subscription for workbooks and the online access in total of $945,954. This will save the district approximately $200,000 over time by doing the lump sum instead of continuing to pay annually. The total cost is $1,123,636, but the net financial impact is $433,636, and that will be embedded into the Department of Student Learning budget.
Thanks. Good, you're so great at this. Joining us to share her firsthand experience as a committee member that piloted the updated curriculum is Christina Dastis, a fabulous 5th grade teacher from Windsor.
Hello, Dr. Vine and members of the board. My name is Christina Dastis, and I'm a 5th grade teacher at Windsor. I'm also a mother of a 3-year-old and 1-year-old. We live in Arlington Heights, and I'm also a future D25 parent as well, so I have that input too. This is my 8th year working in District 25. My first year was in 2nd grade, but I have spent the last 7 years in 5th, and I'm proud to say that I've taught the Conley girls and the Cerniglia girls as well. So I have that, I'm proud to say, I love them. When we adopted the current math and focused curriculum, I was thrilled. It taught my students how to think about math through 3 lenses: pictorial, concrete, and abstract. There were also a plethora of resources that allowed us to support all of our students. Overall, it was a great program, but over time, I noticed that my students still struggled with problem solving and thinking critically. The online component was also dated and not really user-friendly. When I started piloting Math and Focus 2020 in November and saw the materials and resources, I was immediately thrilled. The updated version is visually appealing. The student book and practice pages are condensed into one book, which the students love. There's not like the hardcover book and the workbook. They have it all together, which is helpful when they need to reference what they need to work on. The online component is easy to use, and it has a multitude of resources to help support and enrich our students. A component that I really love is that there's a heavy focus on the mathematical habits. My students struggle with habits like looking for patterns, creating viable arguments, and struggle attending to precision, so figuring out what they did wrong. With a focus on the mathematical practices, the 2020 version helps me teach my students how to think like mathematicians. My students are able to clearly show through modeling and in their explanations that they know how to solve challenging word problems. The growth I have seen from them as problem solvers since November is astounding. I can't wait to see how they grow after a full year of Math and Focus 2020. I always tell parents that my goal for 5th grade is to prepare their children for middle school, and I truly believe that Math and Focus 2020 would help me achieve that goal. Thank you.
So another teacher that piloted the curriculum is Linda Mueller, an outstanding 2nd grade teacher at Olive Mary Stitt. Unfortunately, at the last minute, Linda was unable to join us, so she sent me her thoughts to share briefly. So Linda has been an employee of the district for 28 years, and she teaches 2nd grade at Olive. She wrote, "I have found being a part of the current math review committee to be one of the most satisfying experiences. I really appreciated the opportunity to not only pilot an updated version of Math and Focus in my classroom, but to be involved in such rich conversations about the Math and Focus and enhancing teaching practices. When we first started with Math and Focus back in 2012, I was a little concerned about some of the math concepts introduced so early in 2nd grade. Concepts like adding and subtracting multi-digit numbers with and without regrouping. However, I was so excited to see that not only did the students embrace learning these concepts, but they actually enjoyed them. I'm now excited for the updated version of Math and Focus, where there is a solid structure to the lessons that allows students many opportunities to share and explore their thinking and understanding of math. The learning targets are specifically stated for students in their workbooks, so that there is a place for them to be reminded daily of their goals and make the language of what they are doing in math accountable. There is so much opportunity for students to interact with the concepts in whole groups, small groups, partnerships, and independently. The program really helps to make strategies for solving math problems visible to students. I'm so excited for the opportunity to share this updated version of Math in Focus with staff because of the strong impact it will have on our kiddos of District 25. That's definitely Linda Mueller language. And now, at this point, actually, we want to share with you a video clip because, let's face it, we want to hear from the students. So we spent a little time talking with them about what their experience was like with the pilot.
Hello, Berg. Hello, Berg. I'm going to learn math. I love math. I love curves.
You're welcome.
Hello, Berg. I'm going to learn math.
It's hard to, yeah, it's hard to hear.
You need to just read subtitles, you can.
Hello, Berg. I'm going to learn math. I love math. I love curves. We will learn about how many people like oranges, apples, and pears. We were using sorting like in a row. We were sorting apples and the pears and the oranges because we wanted to learn. Apple? Yes! 3 pears, 8 oranges, and 9 apples. We were making graphs to see how many people liked something and something else, and maybe something else. We were studying for this test. We were doing money and time. We were sort of preparing so we can get a good grade. And we were practicing what math talking rules and partnerships. So we had to do good partnership things. Our family is that we need to know time because if the shop is open at a certain time and we don't know time, we don't know when it's going to open, so we had to know the time if it opens at 2:25, and then we had to be there in time. So open and then we can go in and get support. Sometimes there's an after school basketball game. We don't want to be late to that, especially if it's a championship or something. Or we don't want to be late for that, so we need to know the time to know what time. You should leave that ahead of time so you can get there on the time. Because we really nothing. If you're stuck on a problem and you don't know, and then you're stuck on it for a while, you have to get a partner that you can talk about what your answer should be, what should you do, what plus, and also, unfortunate partnership is it helps you get ideas from math because math has so many possibilities.
So as always, they said it better than any of us could have. So at this time, we'd certainly be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. They said it really well, and you said it really well, so thank you so much. Comments, questions? I have some, but I'm going to defer to my colleagues for now.
Madam President.
Yes, Greg.
Just a quick note of appreciation, Dr. Fitzpatrick. I just really appreciate that the proposal you're bringing to us includes those real-world STEAM performance tasks, particularly adding that A to STEM, the arts, right? And the, adding that layer of soft skills that the arts foster, like cooperation, teamwork, creativity. So just thank you. Glad to hear that's part of it.
Sure. Yeah, very strong music, math, brain connection.
That's awesome. Thank you, Greg. Any other questions, comments? Ms. Destos, I have to say, when we say hashtag D25, it's personal. I think that embodies, not only are you a teacher, you're a parent here, you're teaching board member children, this is truly personal. So thank you for sharing that personal side of your story as well. As far as when you were going over the curriculum, I really appreciate you saying that we're cultivating math thinkers, right? And that we're cultivating that critical thinking aspect of it, and not just the calculated, but the reason, the why behind the math. So thank you for cultivating that inquiry mindset. I have a question. The digital portion of it, is there an app or an ed tech component that students can use at home, or how does that piece work?
Yeah, it's an online platform that the students use in the classroom, but then it'll also have an additional feature where parents and students will be able to use it at home. Certainly we feel like one of the benefits will be it will perhaps further engage families in being able to have math discussions with their children about the concepts that they're learning. I don't know if you want to add anything to that. Okay.
That's pretty much it. Yes,
Yeah.
both.
No, that's awesome, because because sometimes when we change the math curriculum for parents, that math literacy piece is also really important. So it's neat that it's going home, and it'll be that there's that tech portion with the STEAM. So that's good. Thank you. Ms. Malik?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind the board, when I presented the financial forecast in January, we did include an anticipated additional cost to the budget next year for $350,000 for the Math in Focus, which we think with the possibility of funding a portion of the teacher materials out of grant funds, that will be right in line with that projection.
Thank you, Ms. Malik. Okay, if there is nothing further, thank you for presenting today.
Thank you.
We will move on to the next topic, which is middle school English language arts curriculum adoption. Thank you.
Okay, here we go. I'm also excited to share with you that we have a recommendation for a new middle school English language arts curriculum. So here with me tonight is our literacy coordinator, Sharon Nellis, to provide an overview of the middle school English language arts committee work. This committee worked diligently to examine best practices in middle school literacy and to select resources to support our 6th through 8th grade learners. Tonight, Sharon will review the strategic plan connection, district committee members, our timeline, professional learning, resources, cost projections, and we have 2 teachers that will share via video their reflections on the pilot.
Good evening. It is a, yep.
No.
Thank you. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here presenting our exciting new curriculum for middle school English language arts and advanced language arts. This plan connects directly to and supports the district's strategic plan. In Arlington Heights School District 25, we empower an inclusive, diverse community of learners to innovate and thrive as global citizens. Through our literacy instruction at the middle school level, we use high-impact teaching strategies to ensure all learners are academically ready for high school. Our middle school students are provided opportunities to learn and thrive with literacy experiences that ensure high student engagement and ownership of their learning. Student experiences are differentiated to meet the needs of all students and close performance gaps. The Middle School Literacy Committee consisted of all of our English language arts teachers and advanced language arts teachers, representation from each building administrative team, myself and Becky, and the student learning coaches from both of our middle schools, Thomas and South. We began this journey all the way back in 2016-17 school year. Tonight when I leave, I'm going to mark it on my calendar. This is a very important night. I've been waiting to come here to speak with you about this. And we began by reviewing best practices, focusing on the Illinois Learning Standards for ELA, and researching curriculum. Our committee selected, at that time, 2 resources to pilot. In 2017-18, the committee completed both of those pilots and decided to explore additional options. In 18-19, the committee reviewed units of study created by Teachers College Reading and Writing Project out of Columbia University, published by Heinemann. Becky and I also visited Barrington School District 220 and Lake Forest School District 67, which used the units of studies successfully in their middle schools. In 1920, the committee selected units of study to pilot, and we had Teachers College provide the training for both reading and writing professional learning. In 2021, we continued this professional learning as the teachers engaged in the pilot. In 21-22, teachers completed the final professional learning and agreed upon a scope and sequence for our ELA 6th through 8th grade. And next school year, we will continue to support our teachers with professional learning as we fully implement all middle school units of study. So as mentioned on the previous slide, how will we support teachers by providing additional professional learning? We'll continue to focus on best practices in reading instruction and writing instruction, as well as assessment practices and grading practices. So Teachers College Reading and Writing Project Units of Study will prepare our students for reading and writing tasks that they will face in the future and develop confident readers and writers who display agency and independence. The reading units offer a framework for teaching the skills and strategies of proficient reading. Performance assessments and learning progressions help our teachers monitor progress, lead small group instruction, and set next step goals for our students. Build on best practices and a proven framework, the writing units support explicit instruction, provide rich opportunities for practice, and help teachers learn progressions to set students on trajectories of growth. And I will mention here that during all of this professional learning, I myself have grown in my proficiency as a writer. So the units are outlined here on this slide. You can see for our 6th grade, our reading units will cover deep study of character, social issue book clubs, tapping into the power of nonfiction. Our writing units will include narrative, the literary essay, and research-based information writing. And for 7th grade, historical fiction book clubs, dystopian book clubs, and in writing, there'll be a focus on realistic fiction, writing about reading, and the art of argument. For our 8th grade, the reading units include critical literacy, unlocking contemporary fiction, essential research skills for teens, and through writing, we will dive into investigative journalism, the literary essay, and position papers. So, as we piloted this resource, we actually purchased the teaching materials, and so that totaled $13,036.17. We will continue to purchase student novels to support this curriculum from 2022 to 2024, which we anticipate to be $25,000. And then future costs will depend on the need for additional student novels, which we anticipate at the high end, this would equate to around $10,000, which will be included in the Department of Student Learning budget. And so to end our presentation, I have two middle school teachers who are here via video. As you know, many of our middle school teachers have many obligations after school, so they were kind enough to provide some videos for us. Todd Slawinski is an 8th grade teacher from Thomas Middle School, ELA, ALA teacher, and then you will hear from Chris Fontanetta, who is a 6th grade ELA teacher at South Middle School. All right.
My name is Todd Slawinski. I teach English Language Arts and Advanced Language Arts at Thomas Middle School. So what I've really enjoyed in doing the units of study has been the amount of engagement from the students. I think they're really, truly excited about the opportunity to have some choice in the books they're reading. You know, I can provide a variety of different levels of books and different topics of books, and something that really fits with what they're interested in and what they can do. And I think that provides a really great experience for them reading. And then with book clubs, they get an opportunity to discuss those books with their peers, which I think is really encouraging and helps them feel good about the reading experience. And with the writing, I think there's also a lot of freedom for them to write and share their writing and kind of be proud of what they're able to accomplish through the writing and see their writing improve throughout the year. So one of my favorite units has been the Unlocking Contemporary Fiction unit, and that's a book club unit, and the books are really high interest. They are perfect for 8th graders because the content level kind of aligns with their interest, and we've really come up with a great list of books that they've really enjoyed on a variety of topics for them to kind of learn and engage with the world around them while learning about some techniques that authors use and some things that are present in the literature of today. I think the students are super engaged. I think they are able to take a lot of ownership over what they do. The units also have a lot of independent work time, so I think they're also learning kind of how to manage their time and be independent thinkers and workers, which I think will really help them going into high school. It's structured so we kind of model as a whole class and then do some smaller group practice, and then they get to practice it on their own. And I think that model and that skill of being able to work on their own and practice on their own will really help them as they move on from our district.
Hi, my name is Chris Fontanetta, and I am one of the English Language Arts teachers at South Middle School. I wanted to share a few highlights with some of the units of studies that we've completed this year at South. One of them was the personal narrative writing unit. During this unit, I was able to model some of my own personal narratives with students so that they can actually see real writing. They loved hearing about my life, of course, and had some great discussions and connections as well. Students also had multiple opportunities to write short narratives about themselves. Lessons were scaffolded to build upon one of their short writing pieces, and they were able to develop it into a lengthier published narrative essay and share it with the class. And students also worked with writing partners on a regular basis to help each other with their writing ideas, receive feedback, and constructive feedback as well. They learned a little bit more about their peers and also found some common interests along the way. Here's a couple examples of their lengthier published final narrative pieces. One of the other units that we completed this year was the units of study of nonfiction book clubs. For this unit, this is one of our reading units, the students had a choice of 8 nonfiction books to choose from with a variety of topics. They met in their book club groups on a daily basis and had rich conversations about their books and their topics. Students also had a choice of reading connected articles about their books. So for instance, if one of the groups was reading All 13, The Incredible Cave Rescue of the Thai Soccer Team, they had an opportunity to read short related articles maybe about Thailand or about monsoons or about cave formations. And then students also became experts on their topics and were able to create nonfiction newspapers as an end final product. Here's a couple examples of their nonfiction newspapers that they created. And here's just some student feedback on book clubs in general from this year. Students liked working together and sharing ideas. They enjoyed being able to pick different books. They enjoyed how they could talk to people about their books and compare and contrast ideas. Once again, discussing and sharing ideas with their groups and having interesting conversations. They liked reading every day and wish they could have more chapters to read in their books. They enjoyed talking with their groups. The whole experience was awesome, and students enjoyed that. When they worked with a book club, it's more fun because they can talk about their book and others know exactly what they're talking about. So those are just some highlights from a couple of units of study that we completed this year. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about what we did here at 6th grade at South.
So perhaps you're hearing a little bit of a common theme between this presentation and the previous one, in that really when we look ahead to the future of our curricula, we're really looking for opportunities for our students to have student choice and voice. And you've probably heard the theme of discourse, where our students, were really encouraging them to communicate with each other, whether it's about a mathematical problem or whether it's about a novel in their book club. And just want to, in the same way that the math committee really did some excellent work, our middle school ELA teachers really over time have done some wonderful work. We spent some time with the 8th grade group just earlier this week, and the collaboration across both of our middle schools was really exciting to see. As we know, we have some really great experts in our district, and so to see them working with each other and sharing ideas, I think really is exciting as we look ahead to the future of literacy at the middle level for our students. So thank you, and we're happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Nellis, Dr. Fitzpatrick. My colleagues have any questions, comments? Thanks so much, and I want to say a couple of things that you know, I had talked about the Arlington Heights Council PTA event that we had, and the students, our awardees of the scholarship, many of them brought up the experiences at ALA and ELA, and you know, they had the opportunity to invite one of the teachers who've made a teacher, they want to bring everybody, I think, but a teacher who's made a positive impact, and many of them brought their their language arts teachers, and so that's really telling what impact that's made for them, that's going to continue with them as they go off to college. I have a question. You know, if you could explain for the benefit of the community, we have an excellent program already, right? But could you just explain, like, the curriculum review, what is the purpose of a curriculum review? And since we have an excellent program already, but now we're going to put in $35,000 to continue to improve it. So what is the reasoning behind this curriculum versus what we had, which is also really good?
Maybe I could start, and then,
Sure.
yeah, if you want to add. So we have a curriculum review cycle where really, at this point, it's a 6-year cycle where we just really kind of hold ourselves accountable to checking in on the curriculum every 6 years to say, hey, you know, is this really still having the impact that we felt it would on our students? That includes, you've heard some components of that. It's everything from research, from reviews, studying best practices, instructional strategies. It may include looking at a new resource. It also might include we really still feel like the current resource we have is beneficial to our students, but we want to elevate maybe some of our instructional practices. So there's multiple outcomes that can come out of a curriculum cycle. In the case of ELA, we even talked about our timeline being rather lengthy. So we really felt at this point in time, we needed an updated resource that was really going to provide some of those additional opportunities for the students to engage with each other, which maybe wasn't quite as present in our previous curriculum.
Yeah, good. Well done. Well said. I think, too, one of the things that our teachers were really looking for were, as we reviewed what high-impact learning strategies we wanted to present to our students, we were finding that the resource they were using really was limiting some of just that opportunity for engagement with our students. So providing something that was less about assigning tasks to students or assigning reading and more about collaborative experiences. And one of the big goals for our literacy and through all our levels is how do we increase volume of reading and volume of writing? And so that was always at the heart of our discussions is, will this resource achieve that? And how can we utilize some of our professional learning that we've had to make sure that those practices are happening in the classroom? So this resource is very targeted in supporting us in doing those things.
Thank you for explaining that to us and the community at large. And earlier when we heard the ECHO report, right? So this is why, because we're always staying at the cutting edge of pedagogy, is why our students do better than many students across the country. So thanks for all the proactive research and the student-centered approach. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Now I believe we come to our second community input portion, and I know Mr. Berg, you had wanted to had a question. If this is a good time to do that, feel free to use the mic.
Somebody's presentation was just exceptional. I did want to make one comment, and they were talking about the diversity.
Because yeah, there's a community out there listening that'd love to hear what you're saying.
Thank you.
I just wanted to address the diversity in learning in the classrooms and the authors, which appear to have a great effect on the students. I would like the board to consider to strongly do that. Insist where possible minorities. That gives more exposure to the students for minorities. It brings minorities into the community. And I'm going to say, in the environment of District 25, a male would be a minority. But please consider that. I think that would add to the diversity and the experience of the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. Are there any other blue slips we have, Lena? Or we don't need the blue slips? Okay. Melissa?
Melissa Kerr speaking. Reduce, reuse, and recycle the buildings you have leased to the private schools. And do not spend and tax above the limits imposed upon you by the state. And put the website addresses of the taxing bodies on the property tax bill so people don't have to issue a search request when they want to know what the website address is for the taxing body. And cautious spending and taxing at this time while the Cook County property tax system is in a state of disarray.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Wojcik.
I realized I made a mistake when I was talking about the Day of Silence. It was not celebrated on last Friday. It was 2 Fridays ago. It was on the Earth Day. And I also have a question about this curriculum equity audit. So I have this. This is from June 24th of last year. And I don't know if this is something that's going to be done every single year. But the pricing, you know, how much it cost the taxpayers, it was $68,000. So I don't know if this is something we're gonna have to pay every year, or it was just for this one-time audit. Thank you.
Thank you.
We can answer that easily. That was a one-time audit to get us kicked off on the right direction.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sheila Cruz again, and I just have a comment to make. When my kids were in 20 years ago, we had the program Everybody Counts. We also had cultural awareness days, and sometimes it lasted for weeks. And this community has always been very inclusive. We also, 20 years ago, had a huge influx from Albania, and they were at Westgate School where my kids were. And although they had a very difficult time with the language, they were welcomed into the community. This is nothing new, DEI. It's a buzzword today, but Arlington Heights, District 25, has always been a very inclusive community. Not only with our books, with Helen Keller, and in the classrooms, if you were a hard-to-read person, they had different versions of Helen Keller to meet the needs of the person that was able to understand. So I've always been very proud of this community. I've never felt that there was a problem. I don't see a problem. I live in this community. And I just want to mention that I feel this DEI it's a little troublesome because this is not a community that has traditionally had issues with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Hi.
Hi. I think all I want to say, really, I don't have a lot to say, but, oh, I'm sorry. I'm Liz Pizzoza. So the only thing I really want to mention, I don't remember her name, but she had mentioned something how she had said, no one mentioned not wanting this, and so I'm kind of curious on who was selected to be interviewed, because I think there are differing opinions on this, and I think that for someone to say who's doing the curriculum that she's never heard anybody not wanting this, I think that's unfair to say, because clearly there's a lot of people that do have an opposing opinion. The other thing I want to say is that with the curriculum, I don't think anything was mentioned as far as like what's being specifically added and what's being specifically taken out. There was mention of just adding, but with the current curriculum, I mean, it's not like you have tons of downtime, right? So adding things are fine, but there has to be things that you are pulling out in order to add things in. So I think that's important to include and inform your parents or whomever, your community, so that they're aware of what they're to be looking for. Okay?
Thank you. Okay, I think that was the last comment for this evening. We will now move on to future agenda items. And the first item is topics with dates to be determined, which is an information item. Dr. Bai?
Yeah, just the only thing we have in addition to the attached timeline that the board always reviews is a reminder that we will, when we next do our 5-year projections, focus some efforts on long-term capital project funding.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Bai. And the next item we have is new topics. Are there any new topics that my board colleagues would like to bring up future? We have very comprehensive agenda. We're good. Okay, thank you. We are now going to go into closed session, so I need a motion to adjourn the open meeting to go into closed session, please.
Madam President, I motion we go back into closed session.
Thank you, Chad.
Second.
Thank you, Greg. So we will go into closed session.
I think Lana would need to call
Yes.
the roll on that.
Yes, Lana, if you could please call the.
I like doing that.
Member Conley?
Yes.
Member Cerniglia?
Yes.
Member Jogi?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Thank you all for coming.